This is In the Groove with Peggy Ann Saltz, and today chatting with Bobbie Hollanders, Head of Sales and Account Management, US and EMEA at Appier. I think we want to start there, Bobbie, but first, of course, great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And a big thanks to Appier. Appier, AI powering business decision making now. They're not only our topic for today, but also the force behind this episode of In the Groove. Let's be very clear about this, because your company is one of those companies in this amazing space, AI and machine learning, but they're both becoming such buzzwords. So
yeah, it's difficult, right? Because if something becomes a buzzword, I think we talked about this in the previous interview as well, it's difficult to stand out. So I think we try to let our actions do the talking and not necessarily our words. I think if you go to our website or our page, you can see like we've won multiple awards. We've really captured that space before it was hot. And I think that's where we kind of stick out, where you come to us that we're not just the buzzword, we have the track record to do what we do. And when we work with clients, AI is not always applicable. So we really try to figure out at one point, is AI something that you can work with, because it has some requirements to be successful. When we talk about AI, is it something you can use right now? Is it something in the future? And what needs to be done to really make it successful? Because it cannot work every time, because there is some requirements for that.
There's also a skill set to it as well.
That too. Yeah, that too.
So thinking about how marketers are using generative AI, you're known for these capabilities, but not only. How are marketers using this to innovate their campaigns? What are they relying on in their own skill set, as well as the capabilities of the technology?
We have clients that do personal content creation, predictive analysis, targeting based on automation. But the biggest thing that I work with our clients in the Western market is figuring out how can AI identify like data signals that weren't kind of possible to discover in just manual optimization or manual processing. An example for that is that a lot of UA marketers or mobile marketers are focused on their day 7 ROAS, right? They use that as a prediction to figure out if the users that their acquisition partners bring in are going to be valuable for them. And they use that day 7 ROAS as a forecasting method. So what we can do with our tools is also look at, hey, those day 7 ROAS are great, but are there other data signals, events that we can see that can actually help you identify users that maybe in the early 7 days don't share that the progression or a forecast that it will be successful, but we can identify by analyzing that by kind of a smart learning system that goes beyond daily optimizations and figure out there's users actually showing different types of behavior, but can also add to that longevity of a user that you really want. So, for example, a gaming advertiser looking at users that complete level 50 in the first 8 hours, for example. They might not pay, but they really play the game very heavily in that first 8 hours. And then after that, they'll see that they start paying or they become really strong retention-based users. But if they just looked at day 7, that group of users that had that strong retention for the first 8 hours might not show the purchase behavior. So that would be examples where we can use our predictive analytics or kind of automated targeting capabilities for our marketers that we work with.
And it's so important with signal loss, as well as the interest in getting valuable users, valuable players from the get-go. And people are looking, marketers I'm speaking with, they're looking at behavior and they're saying, you have to take a more holistic view, because what looks almost too good to be true, usually it's exactly that. So you're thinking, these are great users, low CPIs. This is great. And then you're looking at
That's
what
what you
they're
want.
actually doing.
Exactly. Yeah. You can really stare, like if you just are very isolated on one specific set, you can miss out on other opportunities that, might give you a competitive advantage.
And that's also where your AI is able to assist in forecasting. So it's one thing to say, this is predictive analytics, and it's great when you can actually forecast out and say, this is going to be the impact of personalizing the marketing efforts, which is great for the company to know, as well as the investors. How does that work at Appier?
Yeah, I think our heritage, or especially in APAC, and this is something that is definitely a focus point for the Western market. We're very strong in the e-commerce segment, where we're helping the biggest e-commerce clients in Asia Pacific to kind of figure out how they can be more personalized for their consumers. In e-commerce, it's the user behavior is tied to their purchase behavior, their on-site behavior, their in-app behavior. So we're always looking to look at, hey, what has a user done in the past? What were things that were happening contextually? So what was happening in app? What was happening in the world that could have kind of led to a specific behavior, and keep learning from that. So our rich experience in that field actually translates to like the gaming apps and also non-gaming apps that are not e-commerce. Because I think if you look at that space, that is so data heavy, so data driven in terms of like purchase behavior, personalized content. Because if you're pushing something that is irrelevant for the user, you're going to waste your impressions, you're going to waste money. So that's where our forecasting can become, is like there'll be a high chance that this user group will purchase again in X amount of days. And if that's on the favorable side, we'll go to that. And if it's not on the favorable side, we go to a different direction.
I think also the expertise in both sides, the gaming and non-gaming, is very key here, because I'm talking to a lot of marketers in gaming that are learning
Yeah.
from e-commerce apps. And I don't want to name them, but there are some that are using gamification really, really well, to the point that even it's impacting the CPIs of gaming because people are playing in the commerce app. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of that going on, which is fascinating. You have an overview. Share with me, if you will, an example where Appier's AI-driven insights are leading to a significant improvement in campaign performance.
We've published multiple case studies in the Western market over the last couple of months. One of the coolest ones, and I think unique ones, is I think you know him as well, Jantine from Tap Nation, where we're kind of started retargeting for hyper casual, which a lot of people think, hey, that's crazy. Why would you do that? But in a late night with Jantine, one of my team members, Daniele Bagnegati, and him were talking about cool things, how they could work together. And Daniele was kind of share what we're doing, and they come up with the idea, let's try to figure this out. And the outset was where we would try to bring back users that showed strong engagement after a certain level in one of their key games. And how could we bring those strong engagement users back with a new creative or a new incentive, and really focus on driving revenue for them in a short period of time, understanding that their game life cycles are short, right? So we need to understand that we can only bring back users that have that high engagement and would play for an intense short amount of time, that they would justify the cost of bringing them back. So in a sense, we work with them on building a strategy where we could target these specific users, identify the users that would be valuable, that would have that strong engagement, and monetize them really quickly within 3 days or 5 days, kind of have a recoup window, so that we can be incremental for them. There's also another client that got onboarded after that that's doing the same strategy as us, as a Tap Nation. So yeah, really customized, I would say. That's the conclusion from that. Look at like, what does the app need, what hasn't been done before, and see if we, with these AI data-driven insights, if we can create something that's unique. And in this case, it was very successful.
Seriously, it's about getting that period, that payback period, that's so critical. And then knowing when to focus and when to just give up. So this is about remarketing and retargeting where it pays.
I think, right, you have to be understanding that not everything is going to work, but if you define good rules and try to figure out what is the best way to make enough revenue from it that it justifies the cost and the resources that you put into it, I think that's something that you can explore. And I think that's great about Tap Nation and Jantine in general. He's very exploratory. He's kind of a marketeer that wants to figure out where the boundaries are. And that's a perfect match for us in that case, where we were not sure if this was going to work, but we had some hypothesis and we could try it out with somebody like him and Tap Nation. And it might as well not have worked, but then we still had a good test and had a laugh about it. But in this case, it was successful.
That is almost as good as a real hack in a way. And Tap Nation is proof of it. I mean, there's a reason why it's one of the top growth companies for the FT, right? In that list.
They have the mindset. Yeah,
absolutely.
They have the mindset.
Absolutely. Well, I want to switch and stay with that mindset, because for other marketers, they have to get a mindset around maximizing the use of their data. They really have to understand ways to be innovative, also unify it, bring it all together. What are ways that marketers can maximize their data and their use of their data with the help of your solutions?
There's two ways to start about it. There's the marketer that really knows what they're doing and has a strong idea of this is how we are successful. And there's marketers that they have a good idea of what's worked in the past, but not really know why that is, right? So there's two ways that you can start working with us. You test your hypothesis and how can we grow it? Like you have a strong idea and how can we add to it? But more fun is when marketers have a good running app and then we're trying to make it incremental, right? We're just one part of their success, right? There's a lot of different solutions, different media partners, different providers, creators. Like you can't be the reason, but if you're the one that can have a good insight on the different connecting pieces, then that can be really interesting because then you can actually show, and there's multiple companies, not just us doing that, but kind of have that unified data integration, not only look at Appier, but look at like, hey, how can the services that we provide be incremental for other partners as well, and really let that data-driven approach, but also with the context of the marketer sharing what they're doing and giving us more contextualized approaches to look at the data. Because if we just look at the data, we make assumptions, but if we have the context around it, then it actually amplifies.
What are some of the most effective strategies you're seeing for, yes, acquiring, but more importantly, retaining those customers, retaining those players in this highly competitive market? What is working in the way of the channels, the approaches, the tech, basically?
Uh, it starts with understanding your audience, right? There's players that are very dedicated to your app or game that will do anything. There's players that have a lower retention, and there's players that just download it and go, right? And I think having a different retention strategy for all three is definitely an app or a game thing, right? That's something that the app needs to provide. But if you have partners like us that can deliver hyper personalized content. Or figure out omni-channel engagement, right? Where we can tag the user here, but also follow up there. And we have a decent understanding of a group of users that move through these different channels. And with that, predict where they go and what they would need. That's where you kind of can enhance every group and also understand that there's some groups you don't want to touch. You don't want to show ads to, or you don't want to engage with because they're kind of self-driven. Understanding that audience behavior, moving across multiple channels, focusing on hyper personalization, and we see that working for most companies when we kind of deep dive down in 3 to 5 different audience strategies versus one big strategy. And if we can go omni-channel and drive different perspective on where the customer comes next and can we help there.
And I'm hearing that more and more from marketers who are trying to think about ways to make certain that they're not just segmenting with the help of personalization and creatives, but they're using that more dynamically. They're trying to make certain that what they're showing the segment is absolutely what they need to be seeing. So it's really real time now, I guess is what you would
Yeah,
say.
and that's super challenging because it requires sometimes an omni-channel approach. If you can understand what a user is looking for 4 hours ago and they're in that mindset, and you can adapt to that in that short window span, right? When a user is about to make a decision, that is amazing. Incredibly challenging to do, but by delivering that kind of dynamic content based on their path, look at your own purchase behavior. Sometimes you make a decision that's years in the works, and sometimes you buy something just because you're craving for it, right? That it's something that is created in the last couple of hours because you've seen a YouTube video and somebody talked about it. You listen to a podcast, and you heard it again, and then if you can be there in that right moments because you have gotten these signals that a user walk down those paths, it is something that does prove the most value. And I think that's where, from Appier's perspective, our experience in e-commerce comes from, because that dynamic content is so key to being successful in that space.
And understanding those signals because they are there. They are there. It's a
Yeah,
matter of picking up on them. Now, we talked about commerce, and that's the point. It's the non-gaming industry, and we don't have the same approach there, but we could adapt some of the approaches. What I'm thinking about here is in the gaming industry. They know their whales. they know the ones who are valuable and they understand how to deliver that value in the experience, because the experience is the product. So looking at what you've seen from both of these areas, the non-gaming and the gaming, help me understand a little bit more how non-gaming apps can identify their high value users. Is there something they can look for? Because of course, these are about reading signals and you're picking up on them.
In all, it comes down to, how well do you track your user in your app? How long do they retain? When they do what you want them to do, are they very active, or are they, leaving the app very shortly? So if you look at what is your goal for the app, let's say a food delivery app, that you have different ones. You have the ones that are do fresh food delivery and you get a subscription, right? So if they have a subscription, they're basically done because they're committed to that subscription and the food comes out every month. But for them, the danger is if you're not engaging them enough on the app, because you're already thinking like, hey, they have a subscription, I don't have to do anything anymore. But maybe you want to bring them back to the app to say like, hey, this is the new recipes coming for next month. You might want to involve them in giving them the opportunity to, at the high scale, pick what kind of recipes or food is coming up in the next couple of months, to make sure that, you don't only take the face value, but you also understand that there's a lot of competitors out there that are trying to claim their attention. So you always want to make sure that they're utilizing the app. So I think that's what's key for non-gaming apps versus gaming. Gaming, the focus is on getting them to play the game, and the game drives monetization. But for non-gaming, when they've monetized and they're using your app, how can you still bring them back? And that can, of course, that needs to be facilitated by an app. But for partners like us, we can help with kind of identifying what is interesting for them and what kind of creatives are they working with that they resonate with, so that we can bring those users back to retain that value in the app. And those users that come back, that listen to it, I think those will become the whales, because those are the ones that also can set the tone for how you should continue to enrich your app with content or opportunities to keep those users engaged.
And also, there's a little bit of out of the box thinking about this, Bobbie, because I was just thinking recently there's this big thing on TikTok around cleaning carpets, right? And I was chatting with a games company that's like, you know what? That's a great idea for a game. So we are seeing, and we will see more games
Yeah,
about cleaning carpets. Now you wonder, where are the appliance companies? Because they could easily cash in on this trend in the other direction. So yeah, it's about,
yeah, that's a cool
yeah,
idea.
maybe
Yeah,
we've given someone a good idea. Who knows? That's always a plus.
yeah,
But you see how gamification elements, how they carry over in both directions.
they're everywhere. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So
definitely.
we've given them
Yeah,
a little
for
bit of
sure.
inspiration. Now I want you to give our listeners some more inspiration. Let's talk about latest trends, what they need to know, what they need to be aware of. It's a standard question, but the perspective you have is going to be the interesting part. So let's just talk about them at a high level, the trends in mobile app development and marketing that we need to be aware of. Yes, it is AI, machine learning, but it goes deeper than that. Talk about those trends really having impact and how to really prepare for them.
App security, privacy, like those are like kind of things that are hovering over everybody. Like, hey, what can we do and what can we not do in the future? We get a lot of emails or questions from our partners like, hey, how are you going to handle this? What can we do in the future and what can we not do? And I think being prepared for that is, I think, is the biggest focus right now. Really listening to your partners, but also peers in the industry, understanding like, hey, these are things that are going to happen. How can I make sure that my app, my marketing, my commerce, my monetization is prepared for that? Because we don't know what's going to happen with Apple, what kind of rules and regulations they will apply, and Google still, of course, also still hovering over everybody. So I think that the trends right now are really dictated by that. And when we know what that's going to do, how can you make sure that you still have enough information available to yourself to keep to kind of enhance user experiences? I think that's for me is really top of mind. It might not be the most sexy trend and most fun trend to talk about, but I think that's something that we're constantly looking at, and how we can help partners, because I think that's where the long-term incremental value is right now.
And you've spoken about that several times, incrementality. That's what companies are very, very focused on, because they're moving away from the short term performance marketing focus to more of a longer term profitable growth, looking at all of their options, measuring them, thinking about incrementality as well, because it's all about getting more with less. What is your one piece of advice for companies that want to balance this short term with the long term and look for those opportunities? For example, also revisiting incrementality.
Actually, like yesterday, I was on a call with a client, and we got some lesser news where they were saying like, "Hey, it's interesting." On we their main goal was looking at the day seven ROAS, and we were underperforming. But they're saying that it's interesting, but your curve goes up after 30 to 45 days. So we're actually in the beginning we're underperforming compared to our competitors, but when we looked at the users that we delivered after 45 days, we're actually overachieving and go beyond the others. So we were like, oh, yeah, your goal is day seven. But if we look at the long term, we're actually working better. Is that not a good thing then, right? Like, because if you only look at day seven, you haven't achieved your goals. It's just an indicator of what's about to happen. And now you're saying that like the person that I was talking to was like, it's kind of interesting. I should say you get less budget, but at the same time, I want to give you more budget because you're actually performing down the line. But we're so focused on that first metric to kind of judge our value. So it's an interesting someone because I was like, should I be happy or should I be sad? But it got him to thinking as well about how should we evaluate this. Again, we're laser focused on hitting the goals for our customers where they want to have, but it was an interesting thought process where we're like, hey, how is that happening? What are we doing differently? And how all of a sudden can be better at a later stage. And I think those are things that can become more interesting down the line when you have less data because of privacy reason, that you have to kind of let go of the original goals that you had and figure out how can you look more at the long term versus the short term, because you might not have those short term signals.
And it really does matter. I mean, that's what we're hearing so much about right now. And we'll be hearing more about it, is that it's about profitable growth. It's about something that is more
Yeah.
sustainable, because even if those days come back, and we've been through them both, Bobbie, where, UA was just like, yeah, CPIs, they were down. They're all up.
I was going to say, let's just buy and sell.
That was fun,
Yeah.
but that's not coming back.
Yeah. No, it will not.
No, it will not.
It was an easier time for sure.
But what will come back, or what will grow, is the future of AI in marketing. So we know it plays a role, and it plays a massive role. I'm hearing about it now for hires. I'm hearing everything about what AI can be in marketing, even hiring and to some extent, even replacing media buyers. So we won't go there because they still have a job. But keeping that in mind, what emerging trends should marketers be preparing for as we integrate AI more in marketing?
I think people will need training and will become specialists in how to use AI, because in essence, it's what you give the algorithm or the system to work with, right? You talk about prompts. What kind of prompts? Even if you use ChatGPT, the better your prompt is, the better the question that you ask, the more defined that is, the more structured that is, the better your results are going to be. Like in essence, I think that's where I don't want to say it's learning code, but it's kind of like learning to work with artificial intelligence. How can you ask them smart questions that they'll have to figure out what the result that you're getting in? And I think that's where there's really be big companies that are able to kind of connect all different things together and ask the system smart questions that takes into account different systems that have to start talking to each other. Because it's one thing when you do user acquisition, you're just buying installs, you have a specific set. But if you integrate that with your active data, maybe with monetization data, all different things and that's just on the user level. But if you pull in game data, like it becomes more complicated for these technologies to start talking together. And I think companies that will be able to show how that should be done, but also have people that have actually knowledge and specialism in how to use that, or train people internally on the companies that are adopting those new technologies. That's where they're gonna be successful. Because if you don't know how to ask the question to AI, you're basically not using it right. And I think that's where we need to talk more about, is what kind of questions are we asking, and how can you send it the right message so that you get the right output, and how can you improve your messaging moving forward to continuously improve that output.
And of course, Appier has a role to play there as well, because not only are you evolving your technology to meet the demands of what the market demands, but it's also about the demands of the future marketer and what they're going to be requiring as well. Give me a little bit of a glimpse into that.
We're a data driven company first. I think we have more data engineers than we have business people. And I think that's a good thing, right? Because that's where the value really comes. So if you look at from our management team to like the people that are working with customers, the focus is always, continues to evolve, make sure that we're investing in R&D, and really trying to break the boundaries. I've worked at Appier now for 2 years, and I can honestly say that I'm so impressed with how fast we changed. I've worked at other companies, and I'm not going to name names, but a small thing required a lot of time and investment. And here we're really looking at, what is the end goal and how can we change it so as fast as possible. And it's made it so fun for me to work at Appier because we solve problems really quickly and learn as we go, because that's also part of, AI. It's a learning system. So if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. So I think that's how we approach it. That's how I also challenge my teams, right? Try to do new things, challenge internally, challenge your clients, make sure that we're trying to break the mold and don't default back on things that you've done. I think that mindset is kind of how we prepare for the future. And I think you can see it in our case studies and the things that we're doing and how we've been trending upwards. And it's super exciting to be part of a company that has that mindset.
Indeed, and such a consistent track record as well. I mean, we're all talking about it now, but Appier has been doing it for a while. And as you said yourself, that constant learning, that learning culture is important to draw
Yeah.
from. And that's part of your business as a business. But of course, you're more than a title. You've been with Appier, as you said yourself, 2 years. And you've seen a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
changes in the industry in that time, I am sure. I know we all have, but from your perspective, what's the most surprising or even unexpected lesson you've learned in your role?
Tech keeps moving, but it's still about the people that use it, right? The relationships that you form. And I think in this role, I've seen more than anything that the success we have is really about the relationships that we've built and the trust that we've built. As you mentioned, like in the beginning, it was all about the install, right? Everybody was trying to get to the top of the app store just by boosting the charts, right? It doesn't matter what the install would do as long as Apple or Google would just see that you have an amount of installs, you would there, you get those users. I think now what has changed is apps can be relevant without being trending in the app store, right? If you have a great idea of how to acquire the users that will, monetize for you, and you carved out a specific niche, I've seen smaller companies being super profitable by just having a great focus. And I think that's where apps and gaming is right now is, have that focus, understand that not everybody can be the next Pokemon Go or Monopoly Go for that matter, right? Those are titles that speak to a wide audience, but you can still run a very profitable business if you have focus and you understand how to use your data as effectively. So I think that has, over the last 2 years, where we can all say that the economy hasn't been the best, so budgets are a little bit more tight. And I see the companies that have that focus, have that understanding, and are willing to commit are the ones that are the most successful.
In addition to working and enabling your customers to grow, because of course you are, as head of sales US EMEA, you're focused on their goals as well, but you've got personal goals because everyone is a person, everyone is outside of work, everybody is more than a title. Now, you have mentioned some very interesting hobbies during our last chat that you have. How do they influence your approach to innovation, creativity, maybe even balance in your professional life?
I think for me, I'm a very driven person, and I have personal goals, I have business goals, I have family goals as well. Like my priority is always my family, my wife and my 2 kids. But personally, I have a couple of hobbies. I'm a big gamer. I love basketball and I love collecting. And I was trying to figure out like how I can maximize my time with all three. And when you have a demanding job like I have, a family, there's not a lot of room left for those things. So, um, recently I've tried combining those hobbies in some sort of way, and tried to make, how can I say it, make it so that I have things that I really want to achieve in that to give me energy. So I've been able to figure out some things that give me energy, give me leisure, but also kind of grow myself as a person. I'm the person that loves to kind of challenge myself on exploring new things and being creative. I'm not 100% ready to share that, but I think I alluded to, I've started a YouTube channel myself. I'm not sure ready to share that with the world, but it's been growing and I've been having a lot of fun with that. I've been becoming creative with it. I'm figuring out how do I talk to my audience and what does my audience need. Working on thumbnails, introductions to my videos. Do I need to improve my editing? Do I need to improve my lighting? And super fun questions that translate over to my work, but don't feel like work. And that's super fun when you get extra learnings that can help my job but don't really feel like work. Yeah, that's super fun for me. Again, maybe in the next podcast I'll share what that YouTube channel is, but for
Okay.
now I'll keep it under wraps.
Okay, I will take you up on that, Bobbie, but I have to say that you are absolutely right. They do work together because the ability to communicate clearly and also
Yeah,
be, educational and entertaining, that's really important. That's at the focus
yeah,
and the core of very successful sales. Also understanding your customer, understanding your audience. Everything comes down to a conversation. And listening, so important. I'm going also to be tuning into your webinar because now I am intrigued. Those are
awesome,
lessons I want to hear about
awesome.
and hear
Thank
from
you.
you again. So thanks so much for
Awesome.
sharing.
Thank you so much, Peggy.
Thank you, Bobbie. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you for having me.
And you have been listening to this episode powered by Appier, AI powering business decision making now. If you want to learn more about how Appier is driving better decisions, then visit appier.com or check out the show notes for this episode. And of course, if you're tuning into In the Groove on YouTube, well, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It will allow you to stay up to date with the series, and not only that, enjoy the pure gold of knowledge and insights our guests bring to every episode.